Today's episode is brought to you by Huel. After Adam and Eve were cast out of the Garden of Eden for their disobedience, they entered a world stripped of paradise, a harsh land where toil, suffering, and mortality awaited them. From this exile came their sons, among them Cain, the firstborn, and tragically, the first murderer. After slaying his brother Abel in a fit of jealousy, Cain was cursed by God and condemned to wander the earth, mocked and exiled from his family. It was in this state of divine rejection that Cain journeyed east of Eden and found the mysterious land of Nod, a place shrouded in silence and speculation. There, far from the presence of God, Cain was said to have built a city, naming it after his son Enoch. But the Bible tells us almost nothing about this land, or the city that rose from its soil. What did Cain build there? What was this land like? What did he envision for the city of Enoch? And could it have been so diabolical that scripture never mentions it again? I'm pretty sure he'll be pleased to see us. I mean, why wouldn't he? It's been thousands of years since he was exiled. He's bound to be over it. Look, I know he's kind of a murderer and everything, but maybe he's mellowed out since then, and...
You son of a bitch!
Cain! There you are, buddy. We've been looking for you.
Let me guess, you need more content for your dying channel.
Well, I wouldn't say it's dying.
It's being killed.
Suppose you would know.
What?
Nothing. So, how are you doing?
What do you want, Legends of History? Haven't I given you enough? I've been cast out to this land of nothing. I live amongst the vilest of the vile. My back hurts from carrying your viewership from the last year, and I'm always hungry, because we can't grow anything here.
At least your city looks cool.
Thanks. I built it myself.
You don't say. Look, I know I ask a lot of you, but since you're so hungry, how about we make a trade?
You have food?
Oh, I've got food, my sibling-killing friend. I have Huel.
What the hell is Huel?
It's a meal in a shake. A ready-to-drink meal that not only tastes great, but leaves you feeling full too.
A meal you drink?
Yep. You don't have to hunt anymore, nor even get a fire going to cook. You just unscrew the cap and... See?
I'll take 20.
Huel is a nutritiously complete meal in a shake. Each serving is packed with 26 vitamins and minerals, high quality protein, fiber, essential fats, basically all the stuff your body actually needs with none of the nonsense. If you take a look at Huel's Black Edition here, they've sent me the chocolate flavour, you can see it comes with all your vitamins, A, D, E, but you also get vitamin B6 and vitamin B12, which can be quite tricky for vegetarians or vegans to get. You also get potassium, calcium, iron, zinc, all those essential minerals that we might often forget about, but are crucial for maintaining a healthy diet. Making up a Huel is really easy. All you need to do is add 500 milliliters of water to 1 to 2 scoops of powder, shake it up, and you're ready to go. The Black Edition starts at only $2.65, and believe it or not, they only take about 60 seconds to prepare. Personally, I've never quite liked the taste of water in my shakes. With Huel, you can adjust the water level to your liking, but I much rather prefer the ready-made drinks. These are perfect for me because I can pretty much get a meal on the way to the gym, without actually having to cook anything. They also come in a variety of flavours, which Huel kindly sent me. Iced latte, strawberry and banana, vanilla, and of course, chocolate. If you're anything like me, these are definitely the way to go. It's super convenient to just grab one, and I do like the taste of these a lot more. Right now, you can try Huel with 15% off your order using my code LOH15. Or you can use my unique link in the video description below, or scan the on-screen QR code. Now, let's go see what Cain is up to. After Cain kills his brother Abel, we know the biblical God condemns him, cursing him to wander the earth. Upon hearing such a punishment, Cain believes that it is more than he can bear and becomes somewhat paranoid that surely someone will find him and kill him for what he has done. So as to ensure his punishment is maximized, we see God place a mark on Cain, which would serve in notifying anyone who came across him that Cain was off limits. Anyone who would dare try and kill Cain, and thus end his suffering early, would incur vengeance themselves 7 times over. Appeased by this, the Bible tells us that Cain went out from the Lord's presence. Indeed, he separated himself from this God both spiritually and physically, and found himself in a place known as the Land of Nod, a destination that we are told was simply east of Eden. This is as far as the Bible is willing to discuss the Land of Nod. Yes, it was significant enough to be given a name and noteworthy enough to be a place that was far removed from God, and yet it never appears anywhere else in Scripture. Whilst it's probably the case that the original authors of the narrative didn't want to elaborate any further on this Land of Nod, choosing to render it as nothing more than a barren space, for some readers it has had quite the opposite effect, where the vagueness and the obscurity of such a land has only intensified the intrigue. What's more, there is some speculation that this Land of Nod may not have just been some barren landscape, but it was a place where Cain found his wife, where he founded a city. Indeed, by some theories, there were people already living there, those who were also outcast from God's presence, or had chosen to distance themselves from him. Now, many of you are likely thinking how this could be when Adam, Eve, and Cain were believed to be the only humans on Earth at that time. Well, it's the same reason why Cain was scared that other people were going to kill him. Perhaps there were other people who had been created after Adam and Eve, those that the Bible never talks about, or perhaps more likely the case, Cain and Abel were quite old when they had their dispute. These people were living beyond their hundreds after all. Therefore, it's entirely possible that there were many generations of Adam and Eve's children living on the earth in those times, and that from amongst them, a whole bunch had chosen to shun God and taken their chances east of Eden, in places just like Nod. We know from the biblical account that Cain made love to his wife, a woman that some have theorized he met in the Land of Nod, and that she gave birth to his son Enoch, not to be confused with the later patriarch, who would intercede between the Watchers and the Nephilim in various apocrypha. One of the most interesting parts from this section is that we see Cain build a city he also named Enoch, which gives us the impression that obviously there had to have been people who would then inhabit this city, considering this is a city and not a village or settlement. It gives us another impression that there were a great number of people here in the Land of Nod, those who may have very well been a more nomadic people, until Cain came along and essentially housed them all. Why were these people here? We don't know. But considering they were so far from Eden and were inhabiting the same space that we are told was out of the Lord's presence, it gives us reason to believe that this was not a holy spiritual place, but mayhaps something of a sanctuary for the lost souls in the early days of the earth, a land claimed by a motley bunch who had decided they weren't going to worship God and were better off striking out on their own. What's interesting is that the Old Testament God didn't smite them down or plague them with some terrible ailment that would force them into repenting. Instead, he seems content to just let people choose their sides, either worshipping him amongst the likes of Adam or building their own lives outside of his influence. This is very uncharacteristic of the Old Testament God, who we know could bring about calamity on a group of people for the smallest of slights. Pharaoh's entire household is cursed when he tries it on with Sarai. 70,000 people are killed in David's kingdom just because he counted his soldiers. Sodom and Gomorrah are obliterated for what is perceived as sexual deviancy. Yet the Land of Nod and the city of Enoch is pretty much allowed to function without any repercussions. Now, one might say that this was due to God being not as furious with mankind back then. Perhaps he hadn't yet established the boundaries that would trigger him. and perhaps he was just trying to suffer the slight in silence. We might tolerate a lot of wrongful behaviour before we actually say or do something. So maybe, by that logic, God was doing the same thing when he allowed Nod to continue existing. Indeed, it can be argued that just as mankind was learning the do's and don'ts when it came to God, God was learning them too. So naturally, he could be viewed as considerably more understanding and lenient back then. Yet the question still lingers. Just what exactly was happening in the land of Nod that made this a place that was relegated outside of the embrace of God? When we consider the word Nod, we know that it is the Hebrew word of the verb to wander, making it pretty relevant to Cain's punishment, and perhaps solidifying it as a place that Cain was destined to come to, a place he belonged maybe, although that does also create an oxymoronic component when you think about it. How can a wanderer have a place to belong when by definition they are meant to wander? Some look to a more metaphorical explanation, whereby the land of Nod wasn't actually a place at all, but a symbol of one living a wandering life. 19th century German Orientalist Wilhelm Gesenius defined Nod as to be moved or to be agitated, once again fitting quite well to describe features of Cain. He was made a wanderer by God, in essence, made to move out of his presence. But we also know that he was agitated. He described himself as being restless. With that, some might say that Nod was indeed made for Cain exclusively, and that those who inhabited the land would only come there after he had already decided upon the place. Another interpretation of the Hebrew Nod is to be a fugitive. Once more, the term fugitive is frequently assigned to Cain in various translations of the Bible. The King James Version describes Cain as a fugitive and a vagabond on the earth. By that definition, it might be said that the land of Nod and the city of Enoch built there was a haven for criminals and outlaws. This goes hand in hand with ideas by Roman Jewish historian Flavius Josephus in his Antiquities of the Jews, where he tells us that Cain wasn't humbled by his exile, but rather continued to live a life of violence and certain barbarity. By this, we get something of a notion of what the land of Nod might have been like, not the sort of place the faint of heart would have visited, and rather somewhere the more gritty, sadistic, and morally ambiguous might find themselves. A sort of Wild West within the biblical setting. Josephus isn't done speculating there though. He tells us that Cain resorted to both violence and robbery. Who was he robbing? Was the land of Nod a place where everyone just sort of attacked everyone, hunting each other in this never-ending battle royale? Or were they more like a tribe of highwaymen, preying on the more innocent descendants of Adam who were living a God-fearing life closer to Eden? Josephus continues that Cain transformed human culture from one of innocence to one of deceptiveness, showing us that those he either found at the land of Nod, or those who chose to follow him there, were corrupted by his ideals and ultimately made evil. Interestingly, Josephus highlights that this was the first city established in the Bible, and that Cain was the first one to establish property lines. From this, you might say that Cain was ahead of the curve in some ways, and that the people of Nod had a bit more of an ambitious vision when it came to civilization. They were not content to simply sleep in caves or under the stars, but intended to delineate themselves from the rest of the wild beasts of the land, and encase themselves behind walls and benefit from shelter. Despite being framed as vicious, cruel people that robbed and killed, they were also proven to be a people who created and built, visionaries and craftsmen, all things considered. Another thing Josephus notes is that Cain built a fortified city. This wasn't just a place for him and his people to live, no. This was a defensive megalopolis. Some might even say a fortress by Josephus's description. Based on this, it's reasonable to suggest that someone like Cain would build something to keep others out. He was paranoid that someone was going to avenge Abel and kill him. That's why we see God mark him in the first place. But it's possible that this very fear never truly left Cain, and that by building this fortified city, he was essentially protecting himself from the other sons of Adam, who, if they ever came this far in search of him, would be dissuaded from trying to enter. Indeed, if the reputation of the land of Nod didn't keep them away, then the walls of the city would surely be a deterrent. Another idea is that this fortified city was more of a flex and a slight to God. It was Cain showing both the Lord and his father Adam that he didn't need either one of them. He could not only survive in a land that was cursed to him, but he could thrive. We see God condemn Cain explicitly, telling him that when he tilled the ground, it would no longer yield any results to him. Cain was basically banned from being able to grow food. He would eventually go hungry. Yet Cain doesn't appear to accept nor suffer his fate. He knows better than to waste his time working the land as he once did, knowing it would now be a fruitless venture. So instead, he builds an entire city. Some might say a monument of defiance, an open symbol of rebellion. In the Greek Septuagint, Cain is described as trembling when he is exiled. In some interpretations, this trembling is a physical manifestation of Cain's guilt and despair, something that afflicts him for the rest of his days. Early Christian scholar Origen of Alexandria defined the land of Nod as a land of trembling, suggesting that everyone there had also forsaken God, and as a result, all had the same physical condition of continuous shaking. He also suggested that the land of Nod was a place the mind drifted to, perhaps more symbolically, when a person had neglected or shunned God, a place where none could find true understanding. He tells us, "Whoever indeed forsakes God, who abandons understanding, whose thinking is continually in the land of Nod, dwells there today also. That is, that person remains in wicked unsettlement of heart and in commotion of mind." Another early Christian idea was that the land of Nod was the opposite of Eden. So by that understanding, we could paint an image of what Nod would have looked like. The Garden of Eden was believed to be a tranquil place, full of beautiful shrubbery, exotic wildlife, divine trees and fruits that could give knowledge and life. Man's every need was taken care of here in this earthly paradise, and we are under the impression that man could want for nothing. Conversely then, the land of Nod was a barren place, with no wildlife and nothing to eat. Very little could be grown on the land, and it's very plausible that man would want for everything necessary for his survival: food, water, shelter. It is no wonder then why Cain established the city of Enoch in the first place. Perhaps it was because he and his people did not have the luxury of living off the land. According to early English rhetoric, the land of Nod could be described as merely a desert that was inhabited only by ferocious beasts or even monsters, perhaps again necessitating the need for some kind of fortress to sustain human life. Considering so many interpretations refer to the land of Nod being outside the presence of God, or away from the face of God, there is an idea that the land was physically out of God's sight, and thus located somewhere underground and drenched in darkness. 4th century Bishop Augustine had an unconventional view of those who dwelled in Nod, and believed that these were Jewish people who had not converted to nor accepted the teachings of the church. When Cain settled east of Eden, it wasn't just a relocation. It also marked how far he'd fallen. He was cast out even further than Adam and Eve were, condemned to life on the fringes. Scripture says he left the presence of God, and that's quite telling. He didn't just lose his home, he lost any connection to the divine. From that point on, Cain was an outsider, cut off, alone, and spiritually adrift. In Hebrew, we've established that Nod means wandering, but it's also similar to the Hebrew word nad, meaning fugitive or vagabond, echoing God's judgment that Cain would become a fugitive and something of a drifter. By this logic, the land of Nod was a place Cain was destined for, or at least a place that would become his, based on his punishment. Upon this land, there would be a city with no God, inhabited by a society that mirrored Cain's own alienation. According to scripture, his descendants followed in that same path, shaping a civilization entirely apart from the divine. However, some scholars argue that Nod isn't a literal place. It's more of a condition, a mindset if you will, belonging to those who have abandoned God and thus relegated themselves to a reality of misunderstanding and deprivation. As always guys, if you've enjoyed today's episode, then don't forget to leave this video a like and don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss my next upload. Until next time.
Why are you here? Of all the places to sit, you sit here. Why?